Welcome to Talk in the Park, conversations with Paul and Noel, where we gather to think out loud about what it means to follow Jesus in our world.
My name is Noel Burke. I'm one of the elders here at Patterson Park Church, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Paul Pyle, who is also an elder in our fellowship. Paul, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, today we get to interview Trent and Vivian Hyatt. They're part of our fellowship, and they have been with Cru for, are you ready for this, 50 years.
Wow.
I don't know that I've known very many people who have been involved in anything for 50 years. And
Right.
So that is a signal accomplishment, and we're really glad to talk to them today. So we like to, with our guests, first hear their story of how they came to know Jesus. So let's start with you, Vivian. How did you come to know Jesus?
Well, I think I always believed. I grew up in a Christian home, and we took church and the Bible and knowing Jesus very seriously. But when I was 10, so in my church, you needed to go forward to indicate that you wanted to accept Christ.
What do you mean go forward?
Go forward.
I know what that means.
Well, the pastor would end the sermon by giving an invitation for anyone who
An altar
believed the
call.
gospel, an altar call, and wanted to come forward to indicate that you wanted to receive
So you get out of your
Jesus.
seat and you go to the front.
Get out of
Yeah.
your seat. And
Yeah.
I was 10, and I
Wow.
was shy.
Yes.
And my girlfriend that Sunday, one Sunday, grabbed my hand and said, "Let's go together."
Oh, wow.
So we went up together, and it was, so even though I believed, I knew in my heart, I believed before that, I knew something important had happened. I'd made a public declaration. I didn't reason that out, but I knew something important had happened. And so that was how I came to keep following Jesus.
So let me
say.
follow up, because whenever I do a membership interview and one of the new member candidates says the same story, my story as well, I always ask this question, this follow-up question. Vivian, there are a lot of things you believed when you were a little girl that you don't believe anymore. Why do you still believe this?
Oh, well, because, and this is part of my testimony, but it comes later. You know, faith has to be tested, or usually is tested. Mine wasn't really tested until I was in college, when I went through a very hard situation, and suddenly it was me and God. I depended on my parents and my church and my Sunday school teachers and my friends, and suddenly nobody else could answer my questions that I needed answered. And it was me and God alone, and that was a very good place to be. So and he came through. I'll put it that way.
And we're in the middle of the testing fire. We never say, boy, I'm glad God is clarifying and purifying me. But in retrospect, we can see that God was in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Trent, how did you come to know Jesus?
I really like this question, and yet I find it a very difficult question to answer.
Okay.
I, too, grew up in a very devout Christian family. And in fact, my father became a pastor when I was in the second grade, I think. And so I was a pastor's kid, a preacher's kid. And I tried to live up to what was expected of me, and I did well enough. Most of the congregation was pretty impressed at the pastor's son. But my family moved to California because my dad felt called to preach in California when I was a freshman in high school. Bad time to make a move from
that's a rough time.
from the panhandle of Texas to
Right.
Los Angeles, California.
Wow.
But that's what happened to me.
Culture shock.
Really. I didn't know what it was, but it was very difficult. And we only lived in L.A. for less than a year, and he moved to Bakersfield where he took a church, and I slowly found my feet there. But the issue of my faith was still out there waiting to really be resolved. And so I first went to junior college, and then I transferred up to the University of California at Berkeley. And you might be aware that Berkeley is not a conservative location.
Right.
In fact, it had a reputation for being the most radical left and uproarious university in the country when I went there. But I went there to study business with a very clear goal for my life to get rich. And so I began my studies, and Berkeley was such a place where you always felt yourself called into question. What's the point of your life? I found it really difficult to answer that question. Sure, I wanted to get rich, but so what? You know, I began to ask the question, that so what question? And so I became very confused, lonely, uncertain about who I was and what I was doing. And so happened, for the first time ever, Campus Crusade, or Cruise as it's now known, put up a speaker on the free speech platform. And you got to understand, the free speech platform was a place with a microphone right in front of the administration building of the university, across from the student union, that the radical left had virtually forced the university to put up so that they could make their speeches.
Yeah.
And they were always left, anti-war demonstrations, the Vietnam War was going on. And I would stand and listen every day. Well, Campus Crusade got the microphone once. First time ever a Christian organization had done something like that. And the speaker turned out to be a very effective communicator, a guy named John Flack. And John told a story of a conversation he had with a student from the Midwest, from Michigan. That was another world for me. I was a Californian. So in that conversation, John asked the student, "What are you going to do with your life?" And the student tried to make a joke out of it. He said, I'm going to live a functional life. A functional life? What do you mean? Well, I'm going to marry a functional woman, have a functional family, live a functional life, and die.
Wow.
I thought, oh my goodness.
That's where you were going.
That's me. Sure, I'm going to get rich, but so what?
Right.
What's the point of my life? Well, John went on to explain how you could receive Christ into your life with a simple prayer. I didn't talk to a soul. I just walked back to my apartment, which was a few blocks off campus, and prayed the simple prayer, giving Christ my life.
Wow.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
In such an interesting environment.
Yes.
Praise
and
God.
that changed everything.
Yeah.
So suddenly I knew what the point of my life was.
Right.
Now, I still continued to plan to get rich, but I knew what I was supposed to do is to follow Jesus. And that really changed everything. I won't go into all of how I left business behind to become a staff member of Campus Crusade. That'll be a longer story. But it was such a life-changing experience that I left Berkeley, having been accepted to the Graduate School of Business to do my MBA, and didn't do it. Instead, went on staff with the Campus Crusade, raised my own support, and lived on $250 a month.
Wow.
Not
Wow.
rich.
Man.
Not rich in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so how did the two of you meet?
Well, we met at Campus Crusade headquarters, which back then, in 1967, was Arrowhead Springs, California.
Okay.
And we had both, unknowns to each other, of course, come on staff with Campus Crusade after graduation, had a year of staff training on staff on a university campus. And I had gone through a broken engagement. That's the hard thing that I referred to. It was unexpected, sudden, a month before our wedding.
Wow.
A shock. And that's actually what God used, and that's a longer story, what God used to get me onto Cru staff. I'm an introvert. Campus Crusade is an extrovert organization. But he made it clear that that's what he wanted me to do. So my first year, I had a wonderful experience with my staff team. I didn't want to date anybody. The guys on my team were like brothers. But when I got back to Arrowhead Springs in the summer, for 5 weeks of Bible classes and 3 weeks of staff training, I said to the Lord, okay, I'm ready now. Bring them on.
Oh.
Well, there were like 1,600 of us, I think. Half of those were eligible, godly men.
Uh-huh.
And I was ready.
Okay.
But nothing kept happening. 5 weeks of Bible training, 2 out of the 3 weeks of staff training. I had a couple of dates with a guy, but he was clearly not somebody I would be interested in. One day I went out among the palm trees and had it out with the Lord, and he won. And I finally was able to say through my tears, okay, I'll go anywhere you want me to go and do anything you want me to do, even without a man. And I had sudden, complete peace. And believe it or not, the next day, I met this man.
Wow.
This man named Trent.
So you couldn't see that because this is a podcast, but she said the next day, and then she looked over at Trent.
Yeah.
It was a very dramatic moment. I wanted to
It
share that
was.
with our
Well, it
listeners.
was a dramatic moment. He may want to fill in.
Yes. Yeah, we'd like to hear that story from your point of view. She said, he said.
Up to that dramatic moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Could I just add something there?
Absolutely.
I tell girls my story.
Yes.
And I say, that's not a ploy. You can't fool God. When I said that to the Lord, I knew I meant it, and God knew I meant it. And
He
as
knows
I
our
said,
hearts.
and as I said, I had peace. So you can't manufacture that.
Right.
Yeah.
You
That's
can't
good.
manipulate God that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I didn't go through exactly a broken engagement, but a serious relationship that I thought was headed toward marriage. Another staff woman in my first year on staff. I was on staff in the Chicago area. And instead of accepting my proposal, she said, I've got to think about it, and told me a week later that she was marrying another guy.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Did
I
you
mean,
even know that other guy was on the radar?
No, I did not know. I mean, and she
Wow.
had given me every indication that I was a really special guy for
Oh,
her.
for Pete's sake.
So it was.
She
not
was
a
playing both sides against the middle, Trent.
Yeah. Who's going to give me the best offer?
Well, I hope she's not too disappointed.
I kind of hope she is.
So anyway, I was looking around, and I think Vivian's got the numbers a little bit wrong. I think there were 1,200 of us on the campus at Arrowhead Springs, not 1,600. But she's not real good with the numbers.
Oh, for Pete's sake. Okay.
So she was looking around, and I did some dating around, but nothing really sparked. And with that many people there on the campus and living in the different areas of the campus, there was an upper campus and a lower campus at Arrowhead. I never saw this one. Did not know her. And then one day, in the main building of the campus, the Arrowhead Springs Hotel, I didn't know where my seminar was. And so I wandered around the lobby, and I saw this very attractive girl sitting on the couch by herself. And I walked up and asked her if she knew where my seminar was. She didn't know. So I thought, oh, well, I may as well just sit down and chat for a while. So I did. I sat down and chatted for the whole hour. And then we took our leave from one another, and I got up and I thought, man, she was cute and really nice. And then I sat there in the main plenary session that day and prayed, Lord, I would like to know this girl, Vivian, better, but I don't know where she lives, and I don't know how to find her. So if you want me to meet her again, you've got to bring her across my path.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, we'd been there for 6 weeks, and I had never seen her that I knew of.
And hundreds of people.
And hundreds of people. So that was my prayer. That afternoon, I went around the corner of my dorm, which is in the lower campus, to change into my gym clothes to go to the gym to work out. And there, sitting on the wall in front of my room, was Vivian chatting with another girl.
Oh, my goodness.
And I thought, oh, there she is. And then I thought, yeah, but I can't walk up and ask her out in front of that other girl. And then the thought crashed through my mind. You prayed, buddy, and God answered.
You have permission to interrupt the conversation?
You better take your opportunity. So I did. I walked up and asked her out, and she was so shocked. She said yes. And I had 6 nights left at Arrowhead before I left to go home and work on my support. So I asked her out every night. And so things took off really fast.
Wow.
The rest of the story gets long and involved.
We
But
wrote lots of letters.
yeah. She was on staff at Penn State. I was on staff at Northern Illinois University
Yeah.
Oh,
near
okay.
Chicago. So, we had to really work at ways
Phone calls were expensive.
Yes,
Yep,
yes, I
yep.
remember those days. Yes.
There was the $1 call after midnight, so I always called her after midnight.
Right, right.
Yeah. Man.
But anyway, about, was it 9 months later? I popped the question, and this time she said yes.
Wow.
And so in the summer of in the summer of 69, we got married here in Dayton, Ohio,
Which is where she grew up.
which is where she grew up.
Right.
So you were you getting married in this area just because you wanted to be near your family, or was it because your next assignment was here, or one of your assignments was here?
Well, I'd come back home to raise the port.
Oh, I see.
So you
You came back from Penn State and came
I came
here.
back from staff training before I went on to my next assignment.
I see.
And so I was there, so it was, and
I
my
gotcha.
family was there, a logical place to get married.
I gotcha.
Well,
Yeah.
your home church was here.
And yes, we didn't
Yeah.
get married in my home church. however.
No, I know, but
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So before we go to the next question, I know you guys have already thought about this, but both of you came into a posture of submission to the will of God before you were able to find one another.
Exactly.
parallel without knowing it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's so
And
cool.
sometimes I think that's what God waits for.
Sure, right.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the term. I'm sure you probably are. Divine orchestration.
Yes.
And I love divine orchestration. I've seen it several times in my life. And when I see it and experience it, it's just exciting to see, okay, God's working here.
Yeah. Some people call it a God moment, or they say it's a God wink, that God is winking at you. I gotcha.
I think it's so neat too. It shows how big God is, because like if you think about just you two, that's really small.
Right.
And when you think about
Yeah, California and Ohio, right.
yeah, when you think about that distance, it is incredible to think that He is orchestrating all of these things at the same time
Right.
throughout
Yeah.
all of history, throughout
Yeah.
all of time, and it's just like, God, you are so big.
Yes, we think about that at many junctures of our life when it could have gone different directions.
Right. Well, you both alluded to the fact that your story of how you got involved with Cru was a longer story, but it's the next question. So this time, let's start with you, Trent. How did you get involved with Cru? First time, that was a catalytic moment for you to hear this Cru guy speak. So tell us from that point, how did you go to Cru?
Well, I started going to the weekly meetings that Cru held, and one of the staff guys there took me on, started discipling me. It was great. Man, I greatly appreciate it. But I kept hearing all these other students, a number of them, saying when they graduated, they were going to go on staff. And I thought, good for you, but I'm not. I'm going to get rich. And that was my goal. And so I don't come from a very affluent family, so affording university was a combination of scholarships I got and working in the summertime. So I had a job lined up where I could work in the oil fields,
Wow.
on a drilling rig, which I had done before. So I was going to make a lot of money, and they started recruiting the students in the student group at Berkeley to go to the summer Institute of Biblical Studies at Arrowhead Springs, the headquarters in California. And I said, I can't afford to go. 'cause,
Right. That's the 8 weeks.
Yeah.
that
Well,
were
it's 5 weeks, really.
Okay.
So I said, no, I can't do it. And they said, we can provide you a scholarship. All you have to pay is $20 down, and we'll pay the rest of it.
Wow.
Wow.
Made you an offer you couldn't refuse.
I thought, well, okay, I'll take this if I can figure out a way to work out my finances, because even though it doesn't cost me much to go
Right.
there,
It
I
costs
won't
you,
be working.
Yeah,
I
it
won't
costs you
make
the
that money.
income. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The very next day after I said yes to that, I got a letter from the University Scholarship Committee telling me I'd been awarded a scholarship.
Oh, my.
Whoa.
And God winked.
Divine orchestration. Yeah.
So I went to Arrowhead, and there I kept hearing people talking about going on staff. And I thought, that's great for you, but I don't want to do that. And one night, as I was lying in bed, I thought, why are you fighting this so? You don't have to go on staff. Nobody's making you. So I said, oh, God, I don't want to go on staff. And if you want me to, you've got to change my desires. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. I woke up the next morning with the desire to go on staff. So when I graduated from Berkeley, I turned down some lucrative offers from businesses who wanted to hire me, and
And then send you to school, right?
the spot I had to do my MBA at Berkeley, and went on to raise my support, and or at least most of it. And, I mean, I didn't always get a full check, but the Lord supplied. I managed, and so I had been on staff for a year when I met Vivian, and we put our paths together a year later.
And once again, that moment was preceded by you coming to a place of trusting in God and surrendering.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very much so. And I have to tell you, when I went on staff, even then I thought, okay, Campus Crusade at that time challenged you to come on staff for 2 years, get trained, and then do whatever God wants you to do. So I thought, okay, I'll do 2 years on staff, then I'll go back and get my MBA
And get rich.
and get rich.
Okay.
But I saw students on the campuses in Northern Illinois come to Christ through my evangelism.
Right.
And I discipled them, and I thought, this is where it's at.
Yeah.
This is far more important than getting rich.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stay on staff. But if I'm going to stay on staff, if this is going to be a career, I want more training. So I decided at that point I would go to Dallas Seminary.
Okay.
And that's what took us to Dallas right after we got married. And 4 years at Dallas, but we had to leave staff then. It was required. You couldn't go to seminary and stay on staff at the time.
I wondered. Right.
But after a year of seminary, you could come back on staff, which we did, which meant that we lost all of our supporters we had before.
Right.
And we really were poor as church mouse through those seminary years.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Vivian, how did you come to get involved with Cru?
Well, I went to Grace College,
Right.
Christian college, and being a Christian college, it didn't have Campus Crusade staff there or any training. However, a small group of students somehow got some training with Campus Crusade how to share the 4 spiritual laws. And in my sophomore year, one of my friends said to me, well, they started going to Purdue University, which was about an hour away.
Lafayette. Yeah.
In Lafayette, and on Saturdays, and they took what they call the collegiate survey. They would ask students to take this collegiate survey, and then, if possible, they would share the 4 spiritual laws.
Right.
So this girl said, "Come with us. I want you to come with us and do this." And I said no, and then finally I said, "Okay, I'll come with you if I don't have to say anything." She said, "Fine." So she and I were paired together, and I saw her take the collegiate survey and share the 4 laws with girls. And then I thought, as I was watching her, I thought, I could do this. Surprise, surprise, really. And so after she had spoken with one girl, she turned to me and said, "Would you like to do the next one?" I said, "Okay."
Wow.
And I did. I stopped this girl walking across campus and asked her to take the survey, and she did. I shared the 4 laws with her, and she prayed to receive Christ.
Wow.
Whoa.
And I thought, this is what I want to do. But and so then I started going with this group on Saturdays to Purdue University, and it was very exciting. And But then, as you know, I got ready to get married, and that sort of was pushed to the background. But then I experienced a broken engagement about a month before college was out and before I was going to get married. And that's when I had to find out what I was going to do with my life. I thought my life was all planned out and perfect, and I was marrying this Christian guy. And then, as the Lord would have it, this group of Campus Crusade staff came to our campus recruiting college seniors, right? And so I would listen to them talk from up front during our chapels, and my friends started coming to me and saying, Vivian, this is for you. And I'm thinking, what do you know that I don't know? But as that few weeks went on, I felt the Lord saying to me, this is what I want you to do. And this is my plan. Again, I gave the Lord 2 years, right? And I'm still here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, almost 50 years later, right?
More than 50 years later. I should correct you on that.
Yeah.
We've been on staff for 56 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
That takes your
Wow.
breath away.
No doubt.
But I noticed, Vivian, twice you had friends who played a significant role in significant moments in your spiritual journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think only Alpha would have been the place for you to stay at Grace, right? Did they have any other dorms there?
When I first went, my freshman year, I lived in a hotel. They
Oh.
didn't have a dorm for girls at that point,
So it was before Alpha.
before Alpha.
Okay.
So I lived in the Winona Lake Hotel
Yeah.
with a bunch of girls.
It was right at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were renovating that when I was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning, I believe it was the beginning of second semester, my freshman year, they had built the girls' dorm.
Wow. So cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yes, Noel's also a Grace alum for our listeners.
That's where I met my wife, actually.
Okay. Yay. Yay for grace.
Yeah.
Well, some of these things are really revealing how old we are.
56 years.
Yeah.
So, Trent, you mentioned in a sermon a few months ago that your work took you behind the Iron Curtain. First, you need to explain to our younger listeners what the Iron Curtain was.
Yeah.
And then tell us about your covert ministry there. So you guys lived in Europe. How long did you live in Europe?
About 40 years.
How many?
About 40 years.
40 years in Europe. These are big numbers you keep throwing at us.
It's funny how they add up. Yeah, well, the Iron Curtain is the term coined, I think, if I remember correctly, by Winston Churchill to describe the division that came about in Europe through the repressive regimes and that were under communism. So Europe was divided very strongly between the Western democratic free countries and the Eastern communist dictatorships.
And that's because during World War II, the Russians were coming in from the East and the Allies from the West.
Exactly,
Yeah, right.
exactly. And so the lines drawn were pretty much the truce lines after World War II. And Stalin made sure that they held on to the territory that they had, quote, freed.
Right.
Hadn't freed, but they had defeated the Nazis.
Right.
And wherever they had defeated the Nazis, they stayed.
Right.
And that was most vividly visible in Germany, which Germany was then partitioned right through the center of the country almost. I mean, the eastern half is smaller. If you look at a map after the end of World War II, Germany was divided into sectors with the four powers, each power having a sector to administer. And the eastern sector was, of course, given to the Soviet Union. And that sector became the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, or the German Democratic Republic, which was the communist part of Germany. And the communist part of Germany was much poorer, much slower to develop than the western half. And so guess what? They began fleeing out of East Germany into West Germany. So I mean, it was almost a flood of people fleeing communism. Well, the communists couldn't have that, so what did they do? They built a wall.
Yeah.
And
Through the heart of Berlin, even.
through the heart of Berlin.
Yeah.
Because Berlin was also divided into sectors by the four powers. And so West Berlin was the three free powers, so that meant Britain, France, and the U.S., and the eastern part was the Soviet Union, and that became then the capital of the German Democratic Republic, which was not democratic. And so anyway, that partition of Germany with that wall, and what it was a reinforced barrier for most of the stretch, barbed wire, no man's land, searchlights,
Machine gun turrets.
turrets.
Yeah.
It was a very dangerous zone. That was the symbol of the division of the free world from the communist world. Now, there were somewhat similar, but not as extreme, divisions between Hungary and Austria and so forth. There were different places like that. But the real division where it was just vivid was between Eastern Germany and Western Germany.
So how does Trent Hyatt get on the other side of that? How do you get through there? And then what do you do when you're there?
Well, very good question, and it was a very difficult question to answer. So we had a visionary in Campus Crusade at the time by the name of Bud Hinkson. And Bud came to Dallas Seminary to recruit me. Now, I didn't know he came to recruit me. I thought he came to Dallas Seminary because we had a missions conference going. He didn't even know we had a missions conference going. So when he got there, I got him on the platform with the other missionaries.
But you had filled out a paper saying you were interested in an overseas assignment.
Yes, at headquarters in San Bernardino at Arrowhead Springs. And Bud went through the papers, found my name, said, oh, he's at Dallas Seminary. Well, I'll just swing by there. And so he did. And he was recruiting a team to go with him to Eastern Europe. And so I listened to him, and I got a group together of other seminary students, and that was my senior year at Dallas. So we assembled in my living room, and we listened to Bud, and he recruited us all. So he had quite a recruiting coup. He got 5 graduating seniors from Dallas Seminary to go with him. Now, I was already on staff, as was one of the other guys, but the others had to join staff to go. But the trouble is, Bud didn't know how to do it. Nobody knew how to do it.
Right.
So how are we going to do it? Well, let's live in Vienna. That's the furthest east in the west that we can live. And so in the summer of 1973, we left the States to go to Vienna to begin the work in Eastern Europe and didn't know how to do it.
Wow.
And when we left the States, we couldn't tell anybody what we were going to do.
Yeah.
Even our parents.
Even our parents
We
didn't.
told them we were going to Austria
Right.
to start the ministry.
Right.
We didn't know about security. We
Right.
didn't know what we could say and what we couldn't say.
So we began to make forays across the border into Hungary. The easiest part was Yugoslavia at the time, because Yugoslavia was communist but pretty Western, and they weren't a part of the Soviet bloc. They had left the Soviet bloc. So they let people come in and out of the country easily. So we did things down there. But Eastern Europe, East Germany in particular, was really like an impenetrable fortress. But I went to a conference for missionaries to Eastern Europe, and one of the guys there I talked to who knew something about East Germany, and he said, I have some contacts that I will arrange for you to visit. So I said, okay. So Christmas of 1975. I packed my little family into our little Renault.
And a baby.
A baby. And we took off for East Germany. And I tell you, crossing that border into East Germany was an experience that I will never forget.
I'm sure.
So I won't go into the details what that border crossing was.
I want to ask a question about that, though. You're crossing the border, and they want to know what you're going to do, and you've got your wife and your baby with you. How do you answer that question?
Babies.
Babies.
In January, I believe it was
Yes,
January.
it was January.
Oh, man.
Well,
There's nothing to see
Yes.
or do.
Right.
Right?
there's Dresden. Dresden
Right.
is a extraordinary city, though it still lay mostly in ruins.
But it was bobbed out, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, you have to get the visa before you even go to the border. You can't get the visa at the border.
Right.
You couldn't at the time. So we applied 6 weeks in advance and got the visa. And so we had the paper to show when we got to the border. So there was really no big question as to whether
Right.
they could let us in. Although if they decided at the border, these are questionable people, they could have turned us back.
Sure.
But they didn't. So we got in and
As tourists,
as tourists, yeah.
Yeah,
When
okay.
as tourists, yeah. We're gonna go to Dresden and see what Dresden's like. And we had our contacts in Dresden, so we went to them and I got to them. And now you keep in mind, my German was still pretty
rough.
rough at that point. I was working on it, but it wasn't real great. And so we met with these contacts, and they kept asking me, and what do you want to do? And I said, oh, we were going to get to know the situation, meet some of the people, da-da-da. And they'd always look at me blankly like, oh. And I thought, that's strange. So one of them asked, and what did you expect us to do? They said, well, this is a conference, and you're the speaker. Oh, well,
boy.
so I really scrambled to put some things together as best I could, translating it into German, and I staggered through my first conference in German.
No translator.
No translator.
Wow.
There was no translator there. There was hardly anybody who spoke any English at all. So I survived. Let's just say that. I survived. But we had contacts, and those contacts gave us other contacts, who gave us other contacts. And that snowballed over the course of years. And I remember one of my most harrowing trips. I got over the border and I met a contact who lived in West Berlin, who was helping me to meet some contacts. And I mean, most amazing character, an older Jewish convert to Christianity, a woman, a widow, not a widow, an old maid. And she had contacts all over the place. It was remarkable. And so, she introduced me to these people, and she'd turn around and say, Trent, what are you here to do? And this time I was ready for that question. And I began to talk about...
You were with a group of students,
With a group of
correct?
students, yes, in a city down in the south of East Germany. And I had my German well enough that I could present well the concept of discipleship. And so I am interested in helping young believers come to understand their faith and how to share it with others so that they can make disciples. The only way we'll ever reach East Germany is through discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
So I made that presentation, and the next morning, Goldie, that was her name, said to me as we were getting in the car after having breakfast in the hotel where we were staying, laid her hand on my arm and said, Trent, you're a good man. And you're the right man for East Germany.
Wow.
So I thought, well, okay, Lord, this is it. You called me here to do this, so it's your show. And I recruited a team of other crew missionaries, staff guys, mostly from Dallas Seminary guys that had come with me. And we made the East German team and spent the next 15 years building a movement with contacts who led us to contacts, and we would give training and discipleship and how to share your faith, and all over East Germany. And so we were ready to launch an East German campus crusade covertly at the time the wall came down.
Okay. 1989.
Yeah. So we were meeting with our leadership team and went to bed one night and got up the next morning. The wall had come down and the world had changed.
Wow. I remember how instantaneous that was.
Oh.
That was astonishing. Because I thought, and I'm sure you thought, it would never happen.
Yes. That wall looked impregnable.
Mm-hmm.
I'd seen it many times, stood in front of it and looked up at it.
I prayed God's curses on it.
Yeah. And so I was there when it happened, inside East Germany. I left after we had finished our planning conference with our leadership team, and the border was open. And you can imagine the East Germans were flocking to the border
Sure.
to experience the West. And as we were in a long train of East German cars, and we were the one West German car there. And so we moved very quickly then to invite East Germans onto staff.
Right.
And less than a year later, we had our first staff training in our town where we lived in West Germany. And I worked myself out of a job.
So one story that you told in your sermon that I want you to tell here is that after the KGB records were cleared and you had access to them, you were able to see that there was a KGB agent following you. And what were his impressions of Trent Hyatt?
I'm pretty proud of the way I handled this guy. I suspected he was there all
Right.
along
Okay.
because I knew the way the East Germans worked.
And that they bugged your hotel room.
Sure. Yeah.
So in my hotel room with my colleague I was traveling with, never talked about anything in the ministry.
Right.
We would talk about culture, songs, music, whatever. So in my
Dossier.
dossier, there were all these references, but they never say anything. So they were so frustrated that
And
they
you didn't go to bars.
Yeah, didn't go to bars, and they didn't know what I did at night. Well, of course, I was at meetings at night, but
Right.
they hadn't managed to follow me. So they did have an informer or two in some of the groups I was in, but they never got anything on me because I wasn't trying to foment revolution
Right.
or anti-government activity. I was talking about God and Christ and following Jesus and
Right.
making disciples. And so I managed to fool them for years. They thought I was a CIA agent.
So let me ask you this, because, I when you were going to these meetings, obviously he's following you in from the border. He knows where you're staying. The hotel is bugged. Are you trained to do
Evasive.
evasive
Yeah.
maneuvering to get to your location so they can't follow you? Or are you just going there and they're not following you at that point?
We were trained.
Okay.
Wow.
So we were trained.
Lose a tail.
Yeah, we were trained by a CIA agent.
That did not come out in the sermon.
No, he came to us because he
Incredible.
was a believer, and
Yeah.
he came to us and he gave us surveillance detection training.
Yep.
So that we knew how to evade and how to avoid. And
Right.
so we were successful at it. The border crossings, I never, ever got used to them, and they were just, something I'd casually take. I knew that I was at risk at those borders.
Right.
And they would search me, and they would, literally, pat me down and feel for things and look in my briefcase and everything. But I managed to get across that border for 15 years
Wow.
without getting into trouble. But in my in my KGB files, we'll call them, which I got after the fall of the wall. Those of us who had been under surveillance were allowed to ask for their file so they could see it. So I got my file. It's about this thick, which is about an inch thick. And in that file, I found out that just about a year before the fall of the wall, they figured out what I was doing.
Oh.
Figured out what my organization I was working with. But things were so bubbling up in East Germany. The resentment at the repression of communism and the demands for freedom were just gaining so much strength. I was no longer interesting to them.
Right.
And they just left
other
me.
fish to fry.
Other
Yeah.
fish to fry. They just
Yeah.
left me behind, which was great for me, but I didn't know that until
Right.
afterwards.
Interestingly, in the files, there were names blacked out for fear of reprisal.
Oh, yeah.
So some of their, guys we could have come after or
Right,
whatever.
Right.
Wow.
So similar to the Epstein files that are just now being released, supposed to
Right.
be redacted. In
Right.
other words, things marked out so people couldn't be identified.
Right.
I've got a number of black spots on my
Yeah.
my.
That is so cool. So, you guys have spent so many years, 56 years in the ministry, and now you're an emeritus status. What does that mean, and what does it look like?
I'll give you the simple version. It means we don't get a paycheck anymore, but we can do whatever ministry we want to do. So that means I can choose what I wish to do, and I'm not required to do any other ministry activities or file ministry reports, and I can reimburse ministry expenses. So when we go to Albania this coming summer to work there with our ministry in that country, we'll be able to reimburse our flights and our expenses, and otherwise we won't get paid. And so that's a good deal. Mm-hmm. It's a really good deal. I like it because you do reach a stage in life where you need to slow down. Mm-hmm. And I'm 81.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think I've reached that stage.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm not useless. I still have things to offer.
Right.
Both from all of my years of study. I did a PhD in theology in Europe, in Switzerland, and I've got many things that I've studied over the years that I can teach on. So I do want to be active. I wanted to use what God's entrusted me. I have a strong belief in stewardship. God entrusts things to you to use, and so I want to use them for His kingdom. So I'll keep doing that, just not as much as I've done in my very full 50 full years of ministry.
Yeah.
Vivian, I know that you have 5 children.
Yes.
And so you were pretty occupied with raising 5 children.
Yes.
But you also had ministry responsibilities of your own. What did you do during those 56 years?
Various things.
Uh-huh.
I will say that Campus Crusade at that time was very clear for wives and mothers. Your first responsibility is to your home. And I always appreciated that, so as not to feel guilty if I
Right.
wasn't doing something that somebody else was doing, So I had that freedom. But as Trent said, we took that initial trip into East Germany together. But you need to know, at the same time we were going to East Germany, we were on a campus in West Germany, leading the campus there. We arrived there with a bunch of students and one single staff guy and one single staff woman. And they badly wanted a family and an older, more mature leader, which Trent became. And so we always had the leadership meetings in our home so that I could be part of that. Mm-hmm. So in that way, sort of through the years, I was always a part, I wanted to be in the ministry with Trent. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to just be the wife at home and he goes off and does his thing. I feel that strongly about any marriage, that if possible, the wife can be part of what her husband's doing. So because of our children at home and because of the nature of traveling into East Germany, we didn't do that a lot as a
Sure.
family, except
Yeah.
in the summers. And in the summers, we pulled this little trailer, funny little trailer, and camped out in East Germany with our kids and got them, to see what we were doing and meeting the people. So that's always been, I've always been part of that. When we started working in all of Eastern Europe, and Trent was teaching, going to all the countries in Eastern Europe to teach biblical studies, I was watching the women who were empty nesters before me start traveling with their husbands, and I thought, I'm not sure I want to do that. As I told you, I'm an introvert.
Right.
But then I realized, staying home a time or two, I didn't want to be home alone.
Right.
So I started traveling with him, and that was the best thing because I got to know our staff people in the various countries. We ended up being safe people. They would ask us for counseling, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And I had many of the men come to me and say, it's really important for us to see you, for us to
Wow.
see the wife of the teacher. And God just kept confirming that through the years. And so that's been an important part of my ministry with the women there.
That's neat.
To understand that, you need to know that after East Germany, our plan was to come back to the States. We had done what we went over to do. We had started a ministry in Europe, turned it over to Europeans, and so I'd done the job. But I was challenged to become the leader of the biblical training team for all of Eastern Europe. And so I thought, well,
Well, to develop the curriculum as well.
there was no curriculum, there was no team. And I thought, well, I could go back to the States and get my doctorate and teach in a seminary somewhere, or I could do this. And the guy who challenged me to do that in Eastern Europe said, and the first thing I want you to do is go back to Basel and complete your PhD.
There you go.
So it was, I had given it up. I had started at Basel working on my PhD, but my ministry was so demanding I could not
Right.
get very far in it. So I finally went to my doctoral advisor and said, I've got to stop because I can't do this. And he said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that because I think you have a good topic to work on and I like having you around. I thought, boy, that's nice to hear from your doctoral advisor. But that's where I was. Well, when I got this challenge and told to go back to Basel and complete my PhD, I jumped at it.
Sure.
So I went back to Basel and I completed it in a little less than 3 years.
Same advisor?
Same advisor.
He was glad to see you come back.
Yeah, he was. He was, and he really likes my work. So, completed the PhD in Basel. We were living in Southwest Germany, and so once that was done, Campus Crusade wanted us to move to Eastern Europe from the West. So not the Western Europe anymore, but Eastern Europe, and that's when we moved to Budapest, Hungary.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest of our career over there was from Budapest.
How long did you live in Budapest?
16 years.
Yeah.
So I just have to ask, since you live there, when I was over there, they said Budapest,
That's true.
and everyone, I feel like Americans correct you like, oh, that's funny, it's Budapest.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. Is that correct? It's Budapest?
It's
Yes.
Budapest.
Yes.
Okay.
But when I'm in America, I usually say Budapest because I know that's what they're used to.
Okay.
Unless you're in the mood for a fight.
Yeah.
Actually, I discovered that there are different ways of pronouncing most of the places
Yeah.
over there because the English-speaking people do it one way, but the natives do it another way.
Yeah.
Right.
Qatar was another one. Qatar.
Right.
Qatar. I thought it was Qatar until I went over there and people called it Qatar. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
how can, what's the most important thing at this juncture in your ministry? What's the most critical thing for us to pray for you?
Well, to put it simply, I'd say pray we finish well. The health challenges we're dealing with do make it much more difficult, and there is a waning strength, but it's not gone yet. It's enough that I want to keep going. I want to keep teaching here at Patterson Park, and I want to keep teaching some in Europe, primarily in Eastern Europe. I've taught both in Western and Eastern Europe, but I don't want to stop completely, but I'm not going to be keeping the grueling schedule I've kept for so many years.
Well, I remember when we would go to that camp in Albania. We went there for 4 years, and you guys were there, and we were coming home, and we were exhausted, couldn't wait to get home, and you were on your way someplace else. And you would spend, you told me, usually 7 weeks.
Right,
right. But, of course, you have family, including grandchildren in Europe. So that's a good reason to extend your trip.
The secret is out. So full disclosure here, we do like going to Eastern Europe. We do like keeping in contact with our disciples and all the people, our ministry we've had so many years. But we also like going to seeing our kids.
Sure.
And 3 of our 5 kids live in Europe. 2 in Germany and 1 in Spain.
And all of our grandchildren.
And all 5 of our grandchildren live in Europe. So if you know anything about grandparents, you know they like to see their grandkids.
Oh, sure.
And we suffer there because we don't get to see ours very often.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming and sitting down and talking to us. Let's pray. Father, we're so thankful for this time with Trent and Vivian. We thank you for the way you have providentially arranged things for them. Trent used the term divine orchestration, and we can see that in so many important moments in their personal lives, in their life together, in their ministry. And we thank you for the way you protected, provided, and given them ministry opportunities and used them so effectively. And we would pray with them as they are coming to the end of their ministry years. I pray that they would finish well. I pray that you would give them the strength that they need to accomplish the task that they need. Pray that you would comfort their hearts. We know it's hard to be away from their kids and their grandkids, and pray that you would give them grace and comfort for that as well. And we thank you for their willingness to sit down and share their hearts with us today. Amen.
Amen. Well, before we end this episode, we should probably talk about a couple of changes that we made.
Yes. You may have noticed the last 2 episodes, Noel is reading the intro, so let's talk about that, Noel.
Yeah, so I was producing the podcast for a time. I will say I was attempting to produce the podcast, and we recently got some significant upgrades to our, we'll call it our podcast crew.
Right.
So we are, 2 things have happened. First, you retired, Paul.
Right. I'm no longer a pastor.
Yeah,
I'm
so
now an elder.
Yep. So you you have an interesting career, right? So you were a non-vocational elder at Patterson Park. You became a vocational elder, and now you're back as a non-vocational elder.
That's right.
So now it's funny. We were joking about this the other day that one of the titles that we received was 2 elders and a mic.
Right. When we had that contest, and now it is 2 elders.
Yeah,
and a
now
mic.
it's 2 elders and a mic. But then also we have Sue Stevens, who member of Patterson Park, and she is producing now, and she is helping us. We are making some changes as far as organization and whatnot, and so we've kind of shaken it up a little bit.
That's right, and props to Sue. She's got administrative gifts she's using to serve us, and we're both so grateful, especially Noel.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, what are we talking about next time, Paul?
Next time we're going to talk with Vivian. She, in her own right, has a writing ministry, so we're going to be talking with her about that. And as a fellow writer and blogger, I want to hear what she has to say about this ministry.
Excellent. We're looking forward to that next episode.
Talk in the Park is a production of Patterson Park Church. No duplication without written permission. Music composed, performed, and recorded by Jason McClure. Produced by Sue Stevens, audio engineering and editing by John Ambrose. Check out our blog, Discipleship Weekly, at pattersonpark.org. Join us next time for Talk in the Park.